So we've seen functions, we've seen variables, but we need also to talk about numbers and strings. So this function is returning values, and we need to know what these values are. So we need to understand how Python uses numbers and strings. Just before we go into it, if I will use another keyword that's called type, and then I will see what the type is this. So it is a float. In this case, Python already determines for us what type it is. We didn't tell it, but it divided a number by another one, and the result had some decimal points. So it just assumes that it needs to be stored as a float. So type is a function actually. We will talk about type later on. But let's move to numbers and strings. So the next line, after we loaded our audio using this function, and to understand why this is in quotes, we need to talk about numbers and strings, and to understand the sample rate, and later on the audio data, we need to understand the type of this data. So we'll talk about numbers and strings. So we can use Python as a calculator. So if you just type 2 plus 2, it will give you the result. So you don't need to write any variables or functions. Python has this calculator mode that you can type an expression and it will write the value. And here we have, for example, integer numbers. They will have this type int. If we have numbers with fractional part, they have the type float. And we will see more about these numeric types a bit later. So here is an example that we are dividing two numbers. This is a classic division that will return a float. So we have two integers. They don't have any decimal points, but when we divide each other, it's giving us a float. On the other hand, if we use this double slash here, it will discard the fractional part and will just return a integer. So this is very useful because sometimes in other processing languages, this is also done automatically. So you need to have, or if you're just using integer, but somehow your result is a float and you don't want to use a float, you need to be an integer, it will discard this part and it will be an integer here. There is other operators, but what is important here is to understand that there are different types of numbers. There is an int, there is a float, and there are other types. So even in integers, we can use different kind of integers. We can use a 16-bit integer that will have 2 to the power of 16 possible values, like we've seen before in the bit depth. But here is also the bits, number of bits that are used to store. For float, it also you use a certain amount of bits, and these are the main, to start with, the main types of numbers. Later on, as we've seen here and here, there are something called a string. So besides numbers, Python can also manipulate strings. So there is a text, we are using letters, and they can be enclosed in single quotes or double quotes. Because remember, if we don't put these quotes, Python will think that this is a variable. When we put between quotes, Python knows that it's not a variable anymore, it's a string, and it will treat it as these letters or text, phrases, words. So now we understand that there are numbers and we understand that there are strings. So here, as I mentioned before, we can use this type. Type is a function that returns the type of the specified object. Here, like we did before, we define a variable. It's 48,000, it's an integer. When we see the type of this, it's an integer. If we put a dot here, it's not an integer anymore. Python knows that it's a float because it's the same as this. As we've seen before, if we use quotes and we see what type is this is a string.